Welcome. I'm Justin McLean. This is Blueprints of Disruption, a podcast that looks to amplify the work of activists and organizers on the ground. Sometimes, the hardest part of doing this job is finding people on the front lines with any bandwidth to spare. Media relations isn't always on the forefront of our minds when we start building around issues. Our priorities are on other things, building capacity, organizing actions, and quite often, going up against some sort of state apparatus. Our hands are full. Planning and pulling off a communication strategy on top of all of that is a daunting task, especially when you consider the state of the media these days. But if our message isn't heard and our stories aren't told in ways that relate back to the cause, how will we be successful? Well, this is where our next guest comes in. Now, as I always do, I'll let Gur introduce himself properly, but as I'm sure you can guess, he is a media guy. And when it comes to social justice movements in the Toronto area, Gur and the Movement Media Hub have been absolutely instrumental in amplifying the good fight. So he's here to share some of the tactics they've been using to shape the narratives, whether that be through the larger outlets or by utilizing resources within the movements themselves. He'll also talk a little bit about the role the commodification of media has played in all of this, and some of the other obstacles and bad actors he's often up against. I was excited to talk to Gur because our missions are so very similar. Both of us are convinced that if we could just get more people to see and hear the work being done and the ideas people have for a better way, we'd be that much closer to the world we're aiming for. So be sure to check out the show notes for more on the Movement Media Hub, as well as some of the great interviews they helped us score. You'll also find ways you can support the work we do here at Blueprints, like subscribing to our Substack account, or maybe even becoming a monthly patron. But first, my discussion with Gur. Okay, please introduce yourself to the audience.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I am Gur Sabar. I am a spokesperson for the Jews Say No to Genocide Coalition. I'm also a member of Independent Jewish Voices, and I am also the executive director of the Movement Media Hub.
And we want to talk to you about all of those things.
Amazing. Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. So we're going to save the little bit of hot water that is brewing for a little bit later, but let's unpack the Movement Media Hub. I have been blessed by some great interviews thanks to the Media Hub.
Yeah.
Out of the blue, you appeared in my DMs and were like, would you like to interview these people? And it was the Refuseniks. And I was like, yes, please. And there's been a handful of really great episodes you've helped put together. They're like gifts. And I wonder, how do you do this? What do you do?
Yes.
How do you get in touch with almost everybody you seem to know? I'm looking through your feed and I'm wondering, are you involved with all of these organizations? So,
yes.
Cole's Notes, what is Media Movement Hub? What do you guys do?
Yeah, so the Movement Media Hub is in short, it's a public relations agency for our movements.
That's fascinating.
For leftist movements in Toronto and Canada and beyond, looking to uplift historically marginalized voices and get them through what is a really painful traditional media landscape. And not just traditional, but also working with, it's an entire ecosystem, traditional, social, digital media. So really helping organized communities and movements and organizations think about their media strategy and how to put their voice forward in a way that people stop and listen to what it is they have to say.
For anyone who's worked on campaigns, especially social justice campaigns and the whatnot, they'll know how difficult that task is, especially when you're so focused on, the action itself, building capacity,
Yes.
dealing with politicians, all of the pressing items. And I know because I try to interview these folks who are in the thick of it and they just don't have the time to stress about their media. Perhaps they've never even thought of a
Yeah.
strategy for media, let alone the time to get all that great work out there. And that's very frustrating because almost all activism relies on, word of mouth, of getting the message out there.
Yeah.
And our messages are everything mainstream media
Yeah.
don't really cater to. You have an
Yes.
uphill battle.
Yes. 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 No, I think you bring up a really good point. Most, grassroots organizations are constrained in time and resources. So that alone makes media, building media relationships and interacting with media a challenge because it does take a decent amount of time and resources. But then, secondly, you also hit on another important point, which is that the media ecosystem is not inherently friendly to grassroots organizations and movements. And so I think what makes the Movement Media Hub very different than a traditional, public relations agency is that we spend a lot of time not just thinking about how the media ecosystem functions, but even more importantly, how it dysfunctions. So, spend a lot of time thinking about how the media acts as a gatekeeper, controlling which stories and perspectives reach the public and how certain voices, especially those from racialized communities who are also most often targeted by state oppression, get excluded. I spent a lot of time thinking about how the media is selective in its coverage, right? It covering only certain aspects of our movements and organizations and actions while ignoring others, which obviously leads to an incomplete and distorted public understanding of our issues. And then also think about how the media misframes and misrepresents our movements in ways that can, materially undermine our messaging and credibility. So as we all know, media loves to focus on the more sensational aspects rather than the substance. And then we, most definitely spend time thinking about just the sheer racism and bias that is so deeply interwoven in the traditional media ecosystem, from top to bottom, from the ownership layer down to the reporting layer and every other layer in between. We spend all this time thinking about all these ways that the system dysfunctions so that we can hack it. It's about going in eyes wide open and realizing that this system sucks. The traditional media in particular, this is terrible, right? It's awful. It's awful in so many different ways. But fundamentally, it's a beast that operates 24/7, 365. It needs our content. It needs us as much as we need it. And as long as we're eyes wide open about how it functions and how it dysfunctions, we can materially work around it and get our stories told. So yeah, that's what we're doing, or trying to do at least.
Do you find a lot of what you have to do is reactionary? I mean, we never really want to solely be reactionary, but the environment,
Yeah.
I want you to hack it, but it's become really unpredictable.
Yes.
So, first, let's talk about how reactionary you've got to be because sometimes the stories are
Yeah.
usually short lived, right? How do you make sure a
Super.
voice gets in there in time to be a part of the story while people are paying attention?
Perfect timing for this question. We had a crazy rally, pro-Palestine rally this past weekend
In Toronto?
in Toronto. 11 people were arrested, and there's probably no more difficult habit to break with the media than their desire and tendency to be basically what's the word I'm looking for? It's not transcribers, stenographers for the Toronto Police Services. And so I've been working really closely with the Legal Support Committee and trying to think about how we're starting to think about more and more about how how this narrative gets woven. And one of the ways it starts to get woven is by what has been a longstanding tradition here, traditional media being stenographers for TPS press releases. So TPS issues their press release, and that is like, I'm literally today all morning have been dealing with publications that have literally reprinted that press release word for word and not offered our side of the equation. And so we're aware of this. We're playing around with different ways to hack it. That means being being in the faces of these reporters, of these editors, of these institutions, every which possible way. And it's a work in progress. We're experimenting with that. And in other instances, that have happened over the past 2 years of the genocide, we've had numerous instances where something happens and we have to react immediately. We will draft immediate press releases, draft video content from protests to show what actually happened, create press conferences out of those videos, create immediate press conferences at TPS headquarters, do whatever we have to do to make sure that the media here knows that there is not just one side to the story. And more importantly, that 99%, 99.999%, let's make it 100 to call it safe, of what TPS says is a lie. So that's been a continuous work in progress.
That's frustrating because, the media has that experience that you have with knowing TPS has put out false statements. There's been like
That's right.
glaring examples time and time again, and almost no disclaimer. Yet every time we get a death toll from Gaza, it's always going according to the Hamas run health ministry,
That's
right?
right.
But yeah, the police's story has often gone unchecked. And
Yes.
reporters, we've given them some grace, at least when we interview journalists. They explain, there's tight turnaround. They're scrambling. They don't have time to get any sources beyond these reports. Do you try to make it as easy as possible for mainstream media to know that there's plenty of, Palestinian voices or voices
Yes.
from the movement ready and available for comment
Yes.
should they need it?
All day, every day. We're
So they have no
literally
excuse.
They have no excuse. And look, I fully recognize, and we fully recognize, right, that, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the legal support committee. I'm speaking on behalf of myself, but fully recognize that media is part of the imperialist state apparatus. So there is a limit to what we can do with traditional media. Part of the Movement Media Hub's work, is based on the fact that it's a beast that needs to be fed, and we need to feed it. We cannot leave it unfed, because any moment we leave it unfed, it will be fed by Zionists, for example, when it comes to the pro-Palestine movement. We are undoing, or working to undo, a 76-year, head start that the Zionist lobby has here in terms of training the media. The media here has a Zionist default, narrative default. So so that's the field we're playing with and trying to materially undo. But it's being aware. It's also just being aware of what the limitations are of this thing, but not letting it completely go, because we can't let it go. The reality is, it's still the dominant way that the average Canadian gets their information, and it still affects the zeitgeist that way.
I I held a live stream once, and it was just a panel talking about whether or not you can craft the narrative. How much energy should you spend on trying to manage, especially mainstream media's narrative or image of the movement? And
Yeah.
I was kind of on the side of a lot of it is futile, but I more meant in planning your behavior and planning your actions and not worrying about how, the Zionists will
Yes.
train the media to try to represent you, because that will happen anyway. But to stay true to like your words,
Yes.
your story, and just kind of keep those blinders up. But I think in reality, it's a bit of a balance. I just get so frustrated with all these,
Yes.
the way that they don't just train the media to talk a certain way, it starts to train on us if we let it, right? Like we start to take that into
That's right.
account, and trying to come off a certain way,
That's right.
peaceful, is one of the selling features that we try,
Yes.
or to couch our language
Yes.
around the ceasefire, because like that was more palatable, at the time and whatnot. And thankfully, there's people that are a little more knowledgeable on this beast, how to feed it and whatnot.
Yeah.
I think I am a bit perplexed by it. So I'm very grateful people like you and your team exist.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you do this work? Like, what are you by trade? Like, this couldn't. Have you always done this? Did you do this before October 7th?
Yes. I have, yeah, have been in media, working in public relations for most of my professional career, both in government and New York City government, New York City Hall. I was a senior policy and communications advisor to the Speaker of the City Council of New York. And then I worked in corporate PR for many years, so have a good understanding of how the corporate beast works. But always, have been kind of activist minded my entire life, and yeah, this is definitely where I'm supposed to be.
A lot of people have to kind of work those jobs that
Yes,
might teach you skills and pay the bills, but they kind of eat away at your soul a little
hardcore.
bit. So it warms my heart when you say that, because although I haven't found a way to make this gig pay, I couldn't do, all those other things, especially right now. Uh, I imagine you are a very, very busy person.
Yes, indeed.
Want to go back to the idea of training the media a little bit,
Yeah,
and the way that the Zionist lobby does it, using lawsuits as well,
yeah,
not just pestering, newsrooms. They have openly declared lawfare. I think that's kind of ironic. They've named the lawfare project the way that they have, like, just, I mean, mask off. That's the stage we're in anyway,
yes,
and we are going to weaponize the law to silence people.
yes,
You are no, you have experience in this. Do you want to
yes.
share with us what you can, anyway, Gur?
Yeah, no, it's we recently, myself and the Jews Say No to Genocide Coalition, recently received a libel notice from the Lawfare Project for a comment I had made um, on CTV on behalf of the coalition, about the Nova exhibition that was in town, and that comment was, basically to the effect of, calling the Nova exhibition the grotesque spectacle of selective grief that it is, and further talking about how it's a cynical tool being used to manufacture permission for Israel's atrocities in Palestine. And what I also mentioned on there is that, um, the exhibition was a tool to bring profits into an organization called the Lawfare Project, which mounted the exhibit. And the Lawfare Project is claiming that this misled people into thinking that they are violating their nonprofit status by mounting the Nova exhibition or by pocketing profits. So we, clarified recently on Instagram that the Lawfare Project is an American nonprofit organization. The Lawfare Project Canada is a charity that put on the Nova exhibition and raised money to do so. over $230,000 through its Canada Helps page, and that every donation got a tax rebate, which means that part of the Nova exhibition was paid for by Canadian taxpayers. And as far as we know, neither group is a for-profit entity, and we don't, in that we don't have reason to believe that this exhibit or fundraiser violated any rules regarding their nonprofit or charitable status. So yeah, that's what happened, and it's fascinating, fascinating process.
What it really is a slap suit. And they're pretty open. What did they say? I had a couple quotes that Jews say no to genocide. I mean, you probably drafted the tweets.
They have their founder, an executive director, Brooke Goldstein, said that their goals include using legal action to go on the offensive and to make the enemy, quote, make the enemy pay, to hold them accountable, and to send a message, a deterrent message that similar actions such as those that they engage in will result in massive punishments.
They sound like great people. I mean, I don't know what we can say about them, but that they don't already say about themselves just quite openly. And slap suits aren't allowed in Ontario, though. So we will see how that unfolds. Like, I wish you the best of luck. But
thank you.
I imagine this is probably not your first rodeo in terms of, if you're going to be out there as a spokesperson for some very rebellious folks. I mean, good people. That is not slander. We love that about them.
Yes.
I imagine you are on a lot of people's lists, but
I am.
Also, how did you get on CTV to slam the Nova exhibit? Because this is kind of sacred ground for media. This is October 7th. Yeah. It has a whole narrative that seems to be set. The Prime Minister visited this exhibit. Yes. It was a national media thing. Sorry, I don't have the language around it there, but it was a big to-do. And in the middle of that, you managed to get up there and call it what it was. That kind of made me smirk. And I imagine that's why you got this notice. That was a bigger stage than they would have preferred you say that on, I imagine. So kudos. And that's the idea, right? There's a lot of people who never would have heard anybody probably even question the narrative around October 7th, right? On CTV, that's pretty a vanilla crowd probably.
Yeah, no, that's exactly the idea. I mean, we treated the Nova, and by we, I'm saying the Jews Say No to Genocide Coalition, really thought about how we wanted to go, to talk about the Nova exhibition. And so, we put out a media statement that we had crafted. The message we were sending to media in advance of the Nova exhibition is that be careful how you cover this. So not only did Jews Say No put out a statement, but the Movement Media Hub put a do's and don'ts guide to how to cover the Nova exhibition for media. And so we really went all out to, basically let the media know that we're watching them, and that they're not going to get away with, again, the one-sided Zionist story, Zionist narrative.
What did that look like? What did those notices look like? What should they have been careful about?
Yeah, it was good stuff.
I imagine the media gets so many of those types of notices from the lobbyists, right? The Zionist lobbyists going, I hear there's a Palestinian art exhibit coming out or anything that they get a sniff of, and it's just they probably don't wait to be reactionary all the time either.
That's right. No, I think that's exactly right. They don't. So it was things like, had a section, historical context, do foreground the historical context, including the 1948 Nakba, the 17-year siege of Gaza, and ongoing displacement wrought by Zionist policies. Don't treat the Nova Festival reenactment as a standalone moment of tragedy. Do call out these simulations as propaganda tools designed to bypass critical thought and manufacture consent for ongoing genocide. Don't describe the immersive sirens, sand, and shock tactics as quote-unquote innovative memorial theater. do seek testimony from Palestinian survivors, Palestinian scholars, and solidarity organizers who can speak to lived realities behind Israel's siege. Don't only interview actors, curators, or organizations linked to pro-exhibition backers. Like, do label these actions precisely: apartheid, ethnic cleansing, unlawful occupation, siege, and genocide. Don't use euphemisms like conflict, clashes, or troubled past to describe Israel's dispossession of Palestinians. So yeah, there were like 13 of them, do's and don'ts, 12 of them that we gave them.
I find that fascinating because if they were in journalism school, the folks that you're sending these notices to, that would essentially be the guidelines, the standards that are supposed to be set for a news story.
Yes.
You get at least two sources, for and against, right? Both sides of the story. The media is supposed to be like just an open book,
Yeah.
right? A telling of what is happening. Obviously that it would be naive for me to think that it actually operates that way, but just to kind of give them their basics, right? This
Yes.
is right back to them. Did you get a response from anyone? Do you feel?
Yeah, we did. Look, we did the same thing around covering October 7th anniversary.
Right.
We did a do's and don'ts, and in both instances, we got responses from reporters who, are thankful for the reminder. Not the reminder to necessarily show both sides, but the reminder of just like a lot of them. One of the things we have to remember is that reporters are like, they're dealing with a million stories at any given moment in time. They're not deep on any story. They're being assigned a story, especially nowadays in media. There's such a commodification of reporters. They literally nowadays just come in, clock in, get their 2 or 3 assignments for the day, and they're off to the races to like get it done.
No time for deep dives.
Not at all. And so largely I find reporters thankful for the reminders of like the points they should be thinking about. But also from our perspective, it obviously was like, how can you not have already been thinking about this stuff? But yeah, no, we have to continuously remind ourselves that we're not, we're deep. They're super shallow, super shallow, especially mainstream media.
Well, that's a great example of you feeding the machine, ahead
Yes.
of time. Here's the notes,
Yes.
copy paste. We don't care. We
Yes.
will never sue you for plagiarism from our statements, right? Like just run with it. Yeah, doing the homework for them.
Yes.
But that's the reality. We wish you didn't have to do that. We wish people didn't have to dedicate their time to that. But that is the reality of how to hack it.
Yes, that's one example of how to hack it. That's right. Knowing that on the other end, there's honest reporting that's like, bombing these people left and right.
You mean honest reporting, not actual honest reporting, but the website honest reporting?
Not actual honest reporting, yes. This
like,
honest reporting
careful with
Canada.
the euphemisms.
Yes, exactly. No, but they are the hammer that's been coming at these guys for years. And that has really worked really hard to train these guys. And one of the great things I think right now that we're seeing with dishonest reporting Canada is that they are losing their grip, right? They're realizing that, in fact, just over the past few months, they've had such an upsurge in alerts that they've been sending to media outlets. And it's obvious that they are losing control of the narrative. They realize they're losing control of the narrative. They realize that people are starting to not give a shit of what they have to say. And people know the game, right? I think what's happened over the past 2 years is that the Zionist playbook has been laid bare, so that now the everyday, John and Jane knows what the Zionist playbook looks like. And it centers around the idea of calling people anti-Semitic for everything under the sun.
Yeah, they've lost ground on that one completely. But a lot of their talking points, folks like you and other people within the movement have done a great job using social media to provide counter talking points to the public. The media, I mean, that's an extra step, but just being able to refute those most basic ones, and they're very old. So although they had a 76-year head start, they haven't really adapted all that much. They've just really kind of been forced to go a little bit more bare and brutal.
Yeah.
And that, people see for what it is. I mean, what they do with it is something else. But
Yes.
it does make me smile when you say that they're kind of scrambling. What do their alerts look like? What are they sending to the media? Do you ever get these?
Yeah, they send these almost, daily, multiple times a day, multiple times a week alerts to media institutions, basically saying, "Hey, this story, this reporter, fucked up their story because they didn't repeat our, pro-Israel lines the way we like to hear them."
Okay.
And they'll literally make they've gotten people fired, they've gotten corrections made, like they've hammered these institutions so badly over the past many years that we know story after story of reporters and editors basically being, I don't want, like they will take reporters off of stories because they don't want to deal with the backlash that comes from honest reporting and their base of users. It's a shame. I mean, obviously, a massive shame on the institutions that they bent to that pressure and didn't really stand up to protect their reporters. It's beyond shame. It's actually criminal, and I hope that a lot of them get held to account when all is said and done, because they have been a massive part of manufacturing consent for this genocide.
Legitimizing it, yeah.
Yeah,
What a beast to be up against, honestly.
yeah, indeed.
What do you spend your days doing? Are you on the phone constantly? Are you in front of the camera constantly?
It's mostly back end work. So dealing with different organizations, different individuals across different organizations, helping them either strategize or put together press conferences, or reaching out to reporters, pitching, whatever the need of the day is. It's what I am doing. So today, this morning, the need has been to literally go after publication, and not even just morning, this started even last night and this weekend, is to go publication by publication and basically say, hey, fuckers, you can't just reprint TPS press releases. I don't know how many times we have to tell you this. You can't just be stenographers. This is not the only story in town. We have visual evidence, we have videos, we have history on our side that TPS is not a legit actor. And you need to start reporting this shit. And so, it's a bunch of corrections that have gotten made and are getting made. This is part of the training. I realize this is not going to fix things overnight, but we're going to stay in their faces until they start acting differently.
One morning you spent it sending voice notes over from the Dala to me from Dr. G. I was very
Yes.
appreciative of that because technology failed us,
Yes.
but by hell or high water, I
Yeah.
wanted to patch something together. So I very much appreciate.
I can't tell you how many times I spend being a middle person, in between people, like either getting them scheduled for interviews or passing back and forth voice notes from the Handala, whatever it takes to get the story done and to fill the airwaves, and ideally then to make sure that story gets told the way we want it to get told.
I meant to ask you this after kind of the last discussion there about the pressures put on media to train them from the other side, and it made me think of Trump's recent lawsuits against media outlets. He was
Mm-hmm.
successful in getting a settlement from CBS, I believe. Acronyms befuddle me, so
Yeah.
I may get that wrong. And now he's launched another one, another like $10 billion lawsuit or something ridiculous. This feels along the same sort of lines of because of the commodification of media. Yes, it's criminal that they don't stand up for truth and they're reporters, but like that isn't what they're worried about, right? They
No.
are worried about turning the dollar, avoiding lawsuits, avoiding any kind
Yes.
of financial headache. And
Yes.
now, we're starting this, well, maybe not in Canada, but the precedent of politicians now. I mean, the president himself, suing media outlets for reporting on him.
Yeah. No, it's you hit the nail on the head. Trump is a lawfare master.
Yeah, I bet.
Um, he has literally, that his he spent his entire life, not just the presidency. how he's built his entire career is using leveraging
You would know
lawfare.
from New York, yes, from your job
Yeah,
in New
yeah,
York.
yeah. No, it's literally what he did all the time. And to your point, it is that lawfare that has caused the commodification of reporters. It is that lawfare that has driven media to be where it is today. It used to be that if a reporter had an idea of a story or like investigative reporting, like that is pretty much gone. Like there's not a lot of that left in traditional media because of their fear of lawfare. So it's all super painful to witness, but my optimistic side is that this world is evolving exactly how it needs to evolve, in the sense that like mainstream media will play whatever minimal role it plays, and other forms of media are rising, and the world will soon catch up that and understand the average person will catch up and understand that mainstream media is not the only source.
That shift is happening. It's just being able to provide an alternate source, right? And getting the reach
Yes,
as a content creator.
that's
I
right.
know that frustration of having a story that you just want everyone to hear, not because it's coming from your show, just because like this is need to know information. I tell my mom, about the Handala and the Freedom Coalition. And she's
Yeah,
like, ooh, you get to interview. That sounds like really big news. Why am I not seeing this on regular news? Like, she believes me. She doesn't think I'm making it up, but she's just like mad that, like,
yeah,
her daughter's going into the basement to tell this story to a relatively small audience. And she's like, no. And that's, heartbreaking sometimes to see
yeah,
creative movements or actions happen that have so much work put into them and involve relatively few people, but they want the reach to be bigger, and
that's right.
that's when they really got to depend on you, because
Yeah, yeah,
otherwise
yeah.
cracking that code seems very elusive to me. I have no idea. But do you take that threat of lawfare though into account when you're planning your day, your
No,
strategies? No,
no,
you just kind
no.
of, we say
Yeah,
that
no.
shoot down range, not like literally, but just like never kind of veer to the sidelines. Just keep your eyes on the prize.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think for content creators, and even we're doing this even with press conferences nowadays. Mainstream media is so unreliable and so thinly staffed that we're no longer just depending on them for the reach. So it's not unusual now that if for example, we had a press conference with Francesca Albanese when she was in town, and we invited media. Only one media showed up. It was City News, mainstream media. But what we also did is we probably had, I think, about 15 different organizations come and live stream it.
Yes, I cycle through them. I get the notifications. I tune in.
Yes.
Yes, okay, you are behind
And,
all those.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so that's part of the deal, right? Is just thinking about all these different kind of partnerships you now have to create and relationships you have to build to basically create the same level of reach that you could get with a local channel here. Um, and it's doable. You just have to come at it in a different way, and the results look different. They don't look the same. Meaning you're not going to see it on your television the way you're used to, but the measurements prove it out. The base is there, and so it's yeah. I don't know. I'm kind of blobbing right now, but it's entirely doable.
And some things aren't measurable. Like you might be able to check your social media accounts and see how many people saw your video, how many people followed you from that video, or went on and
Yes,
clicked the link you needed them to click. But also the unseen rewards, right? Who did what with that information you were able to get out there, like not the press
yes,
release, the
that's right.
stories that needed air, like viewing it hopefully isn't the only thing they did with it, right? Like
That's right.
these are transformative narratives as opposed to status quo maintaining narratives. So yeah, the impact a person feels from, seeing it flick by on CP24 isn't the same as getting to like watch someone in a press conference live,
That's right.
uninterrupted,
That's right.
and asked meaningful questions,
That's right.
hopefully,
No,
Yeah.
you're exactly right.
I'm so glad that there's people like you that exist, and lawyers and all these other sets of skills that have well-paying uses in the corporate world, but have decided to use those skills for good for the movement, because it takes all kinds. I say that I sound like a broken record, but you need a database expert. They're helpful. Video editing is helpful. Lawyers, PR people, like who knew that there was a little PR machine working with the movement. I mean, maybe everyone knew but me before I knew you existed, but I was like, this is amazing. Yes. And it reminds me of even talking to folks like Climate Justice Toronto, TO, where they've become almost a staffing agency for tenant organizing. They see that folks are just understaffed, right? Everyone's just relying on volunteers who are burnt out mostly and have their own set of skills and limitations. And they're like, well, what do you need? Maybe we've got it. And that goes so far, because people have great ideas on key issues, and they just don't have the resources to fulfill that vision and make it kind of gain traction. So media is one frontier that stymies a lot of us.
Yeah, look, and it's a personal passion of mine. The narrative management is a personal passion of mine. For people that
I should have had you on that panel.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I think it's it fills me up in a different way to be able to get voices heard that should have long been heard, and that are actively being negated by state powers. So whatever I'm able to do, whatever we're able to do to help is huge.
Thank you for coming on our little show. And, you've been instrumental, like I said, in quite a few of our episodes, but there was just so much mystery for me and fascination behind what you're actually doing yourself, as opposed to all the other voices you're trying to amplify. But so I'm very appreciative that you took the time out of trying to manage these narratives to talk to our audience, and keep doing what you're doing. Keep showing up in my DMs, and I'll aim as high as I can think of for my next request from you.
I love it. No, thanks, Jessa. It's I really appreciate you being so generous with your platform.
Oh yeah, no, it's a two-way street. I feel like I've been given like an inside scoop when my screen lights up with your name there. So I'm just equally as appreciative. So thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
That is a wrap on another episode of Blueprints of Disruption. Thank you for joining us. You can follow us on Twitter at BP of Disruption. If you'd like to help us continue disrupting the status quo, please share our content. And if you have the means, consider becoming a patron. Not only does our support come from the progressive community, so does our content. So reach out to us and let us know what or who we should be amplifying. So until next time, keep disrupting.